Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Fylde Road Coaching Podcast. I've upgraded my camera because last time I was recording through a watermelon. Today we are going to be doing another review of a film, and it's going to be The Damned United, the famous story of Brian Clough's temporary stay, as a manager at the Leeds United Football Club. I think it was for 44 days. So we're going to be talking about the coaching behaviours he used, how he influences players, and the sort of effect it can be as a new manager joins a winning side, especially at the top level of English football. I am joined today with Lewis Eaton as my co-host, as usual. How are you, Lewis, today?
Yeah, mate, I'm good. I think this will be quite an interesting movie to review as well. I think kind of links in with kind of grassroots level, and obviously me and you coaching it kind of as like a duo. It does link in with Brian Clough and Peter Taylor as like head coach and assistant manager, and kind of like how they both needed each other, which is kind of could link to our coaching as well.
Yeah, definitely. So let's start this off with who was Brian Clough? Brian Clough is one of the most famous football managers to ever grace the English football game. He took Nottingham Forest to the Champions League. And how many times did he win it? Twice, was it?
He won it twice, yeah. He won it twice.
Yeah. So and I can't remember. Was this before we went to Leeds or after when he won the job?
It was after he went to Leeds. That's when he won the trophies with Nottingham Forest. But he was more renowned for going into clubs and like building them up. Like your Derbys, your Brightons, your Nottingham Forests. So when he like went to Leeds, it was a big change, I'd say, for him. As a manager, and maybe that's not the type of role he was in. I think you get a lot of managers modern day now. You get like your journeymen, like your Tony Pulises, your Sam Allardyces, and they're the type of guys who have the West Broms, the West Hams, the Steve Bruce, the West Hams, the West Broms, the Hulls, the Sunderlands. You know what I mean? They're the journeymen that get them type of jobs. So maybe he was just suited to a specific job. That's what I kind of took as well from that film.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that stood out for me while watching the film was how he revolutionised the game back then. There wasn't many. Most of the time, he had a different style of football, which wasn't really common. You know, the best team around at the time was Leeds, and their style of football was cheat. Well, Brian Clough, he famously quoted style of play as cheating. And so basically, what he meant by this is just because all the tackles, the like time wasters, etc. And Brian Clough was very passionate about this. Didn't belong in football.
Sportsmanship.
Sportsmanship, but this won him titles. So like, even though he was against it, it still brought him success to some degree.
So basically, when he was when he was Derby manager, he very much had that hatred for Leeds, didn't he?
Yeah.
Like saying things like they were cheats. He didn't win it fairly, the trophies, and he said when he was a Derby manager that he should be sent down to second division to because of the disciplinary record. And it's crazy because then he took the job as Leeds manager, which I thought was, in a way, for me personally, I didn't think he took the job for his own personal development or for the benefit of Leeds United. I think he took the job for his hatred for Don Revie at the time, and I took from that, to be honest, that hatred of that was, to me, seemed like one of the first football rivalries that you really hear of, like in the past. Like you got now you got like Mourinho's, your Wenger's type of rivalry modern day, but like back then it must have been like Clough and Revie. But just a quick thing I want to talk about is like a bit of research I found about how like power affects your brain. And like it's called like the winning effect. And basically what it is that you could win so much with a club or a team. And it also works with animals in a sense of you can win as few matches against weaker opposition, and eventually when you come against a stronger opposition side, that you're likely to win because of the confidence that you have. But the power can affect your judgment, your behaviour, and stuff like that. So do you think after when Brian Clough left the Derby job and went to Leeds, do you think that power affected his judgment and behaviour?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can say that. I feel like that sort of attitude is probably something. Leeds were like the best team in the world back then, the best team in the Prem for sure. They've just won it. I feel that sort of mentality is probably already amongst the players there. So but it's like it's about that. That team was already winning. Don Revy got a better job, the England job, possibly one of the best jobs in the world, and he has to go into that team and try to implement his own football. And after saying all that stuff, so even though he has that sort of like that, that drive for power, it was definitely lost when he joined Leeds because to any sort of success in team sport is definitely down to the team cohesion, and he didn't have that from the set go, and it definitely affected his time there. So
there's a thing that kind of brings me on to the bit of research which I found as well, which was about like the leadership. And I'd say Brian Clough's style, when it seemed to me when he was at like the derbies, and obviously especially after like doing a bit of research on him at Nottingham Forest, he was a lot about like athlete satisfaction and team cohesion. But when he went into Leeds, it was the fact of it doesn't matter what you won, I'm here now. You'll do it my way, or basically you won't play, or you know what I mean, and you won't be like this dirty side that you once was. You're gonna learn how to play football. Whereas the other manager who was there in Don Review, I think he was there for like 20 years, maybe plus.
He was respected. He was like the
Exactly.
father figure of the whole team. So you're losing him and bringing in somebody who's, like the opposite, and with a bit of a massive ego as well. Brian Clough,
Yeah.
was like I remember like you have Muhammad Ali back at like as well Muhammad Ali time, and even Muhammad Ali was saying stuff about him. Like that's how big Brian Clough was back in the day.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of misunderstood within the younger generation, like us, because mostly we associated good managers with your Sir Alex Ferguson's, your Wenger's. You don't understand how big Brian Clough actually was to football back then.
Yeah. I think it is crazy to like when you think about it, especially watching it, was like his whole demeanor. Well, in the film, his whole demeanor changed when he went to Leeds. He wasn't this like loving character when he was at a derby. He was this kind of came in as like the villain, and I think that reminded me as well of a bit like when David Moyes came in at United. Ferguson's there for 20 plus years, and then David Moyes comes in and changes the whole perception and the philosophy of the whole club. And I think you can't do that in a year. You can't do that overnight. I think you've got to have a process. Like you got offered to keep United's back with staff.
Project. Yeah, I know what you mean. Some sort of project in place. It's like it doesn't take a year. The thing is, Brian Clough, like he thought, even though he's one of the best managers in the world, and his philosophy, it proving to be a successful one, but you can't just go into a team and like in the film it showcases how how brutally honest he was with the squad. That might be down to his man management, or he was maybe so like he was so focused on the fact if he did it then that his way straight away, it'll be successful. But you can't do that when you join a team like Leeds, especially with the relationship they already had with Brian Clough. It was never going to be successful. He almost alienated the squad from the set go.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what you're saying. I think that power kind of went to his head in a way of like Peter Taylor obviously didn't go with him to Leeds, and then he got sacked. And I think at that point, which I wanted to touch on is that like you've got a lot of these assistant managers, especially in modern day now, which don't really get any recognition. But for me, the film like outlined how like Peter Taylor was a kind of like a success behind the face. Like Brian Clough is the face, but Peter Taylor was like kind of like the hard work and kind of the brain. Sometimes it seemed that way for me. It was a fact of like Peter Taylor seemed like a very loyal man. Like he already agreed to deal with Brighton, so he was going there, and Clough was like, "But we've been offered the best job." But like Peter Taylor was basically saying, "No, we're going to Brighton," but he departed ways, and Brian Clough loses his job, and then goes back to Peter Taylor, becomes successful, and then doing a bit of research, I found that when they went to Forest, he had another falling out, and then a year or two later, but obviously the first season of the Premier League, Brian Clough got relegated without having Peter Taylor as assistant. So I think it is crazy to think that maybe like Peter Taylor was like the success behind the face. And I'd say it's like with an example like modern day, like your team Newcastle with Steve Bruce. I know there's a guy that's just coming now.
Great, yeah. So Graham Jones, it's just it. if you look at like how the fans are reacting to Graham Jones coming into the club, it's like the people are saying Steve Bruce is a puppet. He's just
Yeah,
there, just act as the coach, while Graham Jones does all the dirty work behind him. And from my point of view, as being a Newcastle fan, I completely agree with him. As soon as Graham Jones come into the team, I think it was just before which game was it? The Everton game, and ever since then we've been a completely different team.
yeah,
So it just shows how important as any like football manager is having somebody behind you who will be willing to do the dirty work, do the tactics, trying to embed the philosophy or the direction of the club's philosophy into the players. And it just showcases how important it is, especially at the elite level. And that brings me on to like the question, like for us, how important is it? Like because we work as a team, how important is it of us both being on the same page, working together, trying to embed our philosophy into the players. How
yeah.
important do you reckon it is as a pair?
I think it's definitely important you embed your philosophy, and I think it is very healthy to have differences as well in what you're saying.
Yeah,
I think maybe that's why, for example, Brian Clough and Peter Taylor were so successful is because they had very similar philosophies but different ideas in
yeah,
like maybe the way they set up or something like that. They had different ideas. Whereas I think me and you have to be the same. Is that you've got to have someone who's on the same wavelength of your philosophy, but is not going to be like a yes man kind of thing in the
yeah,
sense of just agreeing with everything. Oh yeah, that's fine. Yeah, go out that. And I think you mentioned you're a good example there, Steve Bruce. I think maybe he's had that around him at the assistant managers at Newcastle since this guy's come in. He's had
yeah.
them yes men just saying, "All right, it's all right, don't worry." And to be honest, when we watch the games, it doesn't seem like Steve Bruce knows a lot what's going on.
No,
And
he
then
doesn't.
got this new guy who's on the side and he's
Yeah,
shouting
yeah,
orders. And Newcastle recently have been playing a lot better.
yeah,
So I think that maybe that understanding of the philosophy of what that person wants to follow is the best thing, but also not just being like you said, like the puppet, like the manager
yeah.
being the puppet.
I agree. Like it's very important about like the different they have got different ideas, and the assistant manager doesn't just bow down to the first team manager's ideas just because probably he's the guy in charge. He
Mm.
needs that difference of um ideas is just it'll benefit the team even though because one of them's going to be right. One of the ideas, no, like one idea could be wrong, but the other one could be right. So it's just up to finding that sort of like, you know what I mean,
Balance.
balance. Yeah,
Yeah, and to be fair, like you said, I think when taking a lot of things from that film, I think it does relate to what we're doing in a kind of sense. It could relate to any coach really, but the fact we're like a duo, and it seemed to me that Brian Clough was always there, as like the face of the football club, face of Derby, face of
yeah,
Leeds. But like Peter Taylor never got a mention, and you think to yourself like he must have been. People were saying like, is Peter Taylor like the brains? Like it come up with like the news articles and stuff, didn't it? Saying like now Clough hasn't got Taylor, like what is he and stuff like that, and he struggled. So I think personally, them two were just perfect together, like
yeah.
perfect, like a perfect relationship, like for them. So when they were apart, it must have been like quite difficult. So would you say that like in our coaching, do you prefer coaching on your own, or would you say coaching as a pair was more beneficial for you?
Personally, I think cushion as a pair. I feel like maybe you could at the recreational level of coaching independent because it's not really like the if you lose a couple of games you don't get sacked. Like it's not that big of an issue. But work for me personally, I just have a bit more enjoyment working as a pair. I feel like you can just connect. You can discuss tactics. You can discuss the team with somebody. You can get a second opinion on everything you do. And I feel like that's probably a bit better, especially at our level, where you can be
Mm.
like, oh yeah, I reckon we should start this team, and then you could be like, oh, this player's not getting enough time, he's coming to training, include him. Them little sort of stuff, or just simple communication between us two as head coaches, it definitely benefits, and you can see that the positive effects throughout the team as well. So definitely working in the pair for me. What about
Yeah,
yourself?
I'd have to agree. I think working in a pair kind of reminds me of them two managers from Salford, kind of in a way. The way
Yeah,
they were duo managers, weren't they? And when you watch like that documentary, like they're very similar in what they're saying, but they do share differences. And I think that's what I like is the fact that they are bounced off each other and they're so successful. And they're at Chester now, and they're doing a good job at Chester. So I just think to myself like maybe that is beneficial, but maybe at the high level, I'd say you can't have duo managers, and it's obviously seemed that every football club, other than them two as an exception, has one manager.
But you could argue that like Steve Bruce now, like he's not, I guarantee I can put my house on it now. But Steve Bruce's roles is like so many people are taking the weight off his shoulders, like behind the scenes.
Yeah,
He's not doing the training. He's probably not even picking a team. He's just standing. It's just like having his input. Like
he's just there as Steve Bruce.
even though even though it's not like filmed on Sky as like two head managers, there'll be people there like you'll be acting as this like like assistant head manager role. Like even though it sounds like they're below him, I feel like at the elite level, especially teams like Newcastle, like even West Ham as well. Kevin Olin's always on the sideline. I feel like it is like there is a duo sort of partnership going on down there.
It goes back to the point as well, like that team cohesion, isn't it, and like creating that athlete satisfaction. I think especially with a club like Newcastle, like I think it's got to be the team's got to be a strong bond, because like you could be fighting for your lives in relegation towards the end of the season. That team's got to have like a strong bond, and everyone's got to work as a unit. And like I think I agree with what you're saying, that like in a sense of some managers can be like the almost just like there as a name, like Steve Bruce. Everyone knows who Steve Bruce is, but no one knows all the people working behind the scenes who are putting all the graft in as well.
I think Newcastle have we have like 5 people in like out of the 7 coaching staff all called Steve as well. So it's another interesting fact.
Well, another question I've got for you, and I just an interesting point, because as you look through like the Prem, especially now, do you think great players always necessarily make great managers?
um, I reckon it gives them an advantage. I reckon. Uh, I don't know who as a head manager which manager in the Prem now wasn't a successful footballer. Probably Jose Mourinho is one that stands out.
That's the one I always think of.
But that's like the obvious one. Like looking down towards like bottom half of the table. Who's there? So Steve Bruce, he was a first team manager.
Man United, yeah.
He's first team player. For Man United, he was successful. I
think Moyes played. You've got others, Arteta, Lampard, but you didn't sack.
Yeah,
that's what you get. I think what you're getting now as well is with modern football, it's all about employing these amazing players as managers, isn't it? Like Brian Clough was a really good footballer, but he got injured. So like that probably driven him more to become the best manager he could, because he got injured so early and he was such a good player, he played for England and everything like that. So that probably drove him more. But when you've got players like Pirlo at Juventus, Gerrard at Rangers, you had obviously Lampard at Chelsea, not anymore, but Arteta at Arsenal, you've got all these players who are coming from basically successful teams.
But who else? But who else is going to get that job then?
That's what I mean. So I think, especially with what we're saying, like when we're saying now about like the assistant manager role in football, it rarely happens now where a manager gets sacked and the assistant manager or someone steps in from the club. It's always someone external or a legend steps in.
Yeah, like well, to be fair, there's Bournemouth at the moment. They had a interim manager was Jonathan Woodgate.
Yeah.
But now Harry Redknapp's gone there, so that'll be interesting. Looking forward to the season. Yeah, but I was thinking now, like maybe because you see, not mentioned on these players like the Gerrard, your Pirlo, yeah, Rooney, like maybe it's just because like these players are retired and it's just because of the football channel, like it's just moving, football's just moving, and what else are these players going to do? Like retire? There's a pathway to coaching for them. They've probably already got their coaching badges and they've played at that level, so they've probably got a better chances of getting it, and they know the people as well. Football's all about like who you know. Oh, we're back. Sorry for our technical issues. Lewis's laptop froze, but we're back with it. So I was just going to talk about like the pathway between how differences between you go for the professional football club and then you go into coaching. The difference between like someone for us, we'll go to like a football academy, do our coaching badges there, and then progress to like an under 18s role, and then from there, then take like an assistant manager's job somewhere, and then to a first team, and then work your way up through the football pyramid. For professional football, on the other hand, it will be a bit different. They'll already be at the top of that pyramid. So that's probably where like the differences between the pathways. You could argue that going through an academy, you'll learn much more about how the team manage and stuff like that. You won't really get at the as a professional footballer, but then you still experience great managers, how they do it as well. And being a coach, you develop yourself through other coaches' values and experiences, and then it kind of molds your own sort of philosophy.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like for me personally, I think it's much easier being a professional footballer because you already got the contacts. It's about who you know and stuff like that. Yeah. So I just want to ask you a question. So do you reckon if you were an assistant manager, do you reckon you want to be a first team manager, or do you reckon you'd rather be take a bit step back from that that limelight and do the dirty work?
To be honest, personally, I feel like I would want to be an assistant manager, and I don't know if that's a bit of a weird way to take it, but I feel like, especially the way football's going now, the amount of abuse managers get through social media and stuff like that, it's just so difficult for them. Like, you lose one game as a football manager in the Premier League, you're getting hounded all over social media. As assistant manager, you get that kind of a bit more relaxed, isn't it? Like, you're a bit more like in the shadows and you do the work and you're still having a massive part of the team. But with,
Yeah.
like you said, like with the manager, like it's a bit. I feel like it's so much pressure on you.
So you're
But
not
with
really
assistant, you
you
haven't
got
got
much
that, have you?
you haven't got that like them stresses of the fans and their opinion, do you? Like you're the only really like pressure you really get is probably from the results or the board. Is the only
Mhm.
time you'll probably get experience some sort of pressure, and it will be quite it will be a lot of pressure depending on how the team's like doing success wise. But yeah, I kind of agree with you too. Like to be fair, to be a manager at the elite level, like there's so much pressure, and the assistant manager does exactly the same much. To be fair, the difference is probably the pay. Let's be honest, you probably
Mhm.
get a much higher pay being a first team manager. But looking at the psychological side of it, I feel like I've been much more comfortable as an assistant manager than a first team, in my own opinion.
Yeah, definitely. I think I agree with you. I obviously agree with my own point, but I mean, as in like you look at like managers now with the amount of pressure that they get. Like you get like your Solskjaer's like he loses like 4 games as United manager or draws 2, and people are in contention for his job. Like as an assistant manager, Mike Phelan, assistant manager for Ferguson, assistant manager for Ollie now. He's just got so. It's still a serious job, but it's much more relaxed. No one's coming over social media being like, "Oh, let's sack Mike Phelan." Do you
But
know what I mean?
he's got success associated to his name, so you can argue that like even though that like it's not his fault because he's been the assistant manager when Sir Alex Ferguson was in charge and look how successful he was. So you
Yeah.
could argue that.
I think when people see that success, they ultimately think that like, well, he's had that success, so he's always going to have it. And I think that brings back to the film and the fact of like Brian Clough was at Forest and he's won all that with Nottingham Forest, the Champions League, the Division One titles and that, and then towards the end of his career, he gets relegated, his last ever season in football, and like you think to yourself like back then the Forest fans are all like I think I can remember seeing like a bit of a documentary on it where like the Forest fans were like buzzing. Like he's always been the greatest manager we've ever had. The success he brought, and they weren't bothered that they got relegated because like, we'll be back up next year. And sadly, he's never been back in the Premier League. I don't think, but like, do you know what I mean? So they have that like, in a way, respect that you've done this for the club. And I don't think you get that in modern football. Like, look at Wenger towards the end of Arsenal. Like, how horrible was that? The
I
fact that he
know.
did all that for Arsenal and they
And he
just
what
treated him so bad.
and he won more points than Sir Alex as well.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and he won 3 Premier League trophies. 10 less than Sir Alex, but still
Yeah.
three. Still quite a mad stat to have for any manager. Like the Premier League's such a hard league to win, and he's won it 3 times. And towards the end of his career, you got that YouTube channel of Arsenal fans TV that's going in at him, and you just feel like he just didn't deserve it at all. Like what he's done to that club, it was mad. And to be fair, after he left, you could kind of see like how important he actually was. Like he was keeping
Yeah.
this team in top four. They weren't happy with top four, but look at him now. They're not, like, struggling to
Yeah,
get top half.
that's what's crazy, isn't it? Is that like they're all saying about like how much Wenger's such a bad manager and all this and like, well, you got your top four and maybe got you an FA Cup every odd season. And if you said to an Arsenal fan now, I'll give you an FA Cup and top four, they'd snap your hand off.
Yeah,
Do you know
definitely.
what I mean? So
He's,
like it
he's
shows how football's changed, to be honest.
yeah. He's another manager like Brian Clough. You know, he revolutionised football. Like he came into Arsenal and he had diets and stuff, and all the players were like borderline alcoholics.
Yeah, true.
You know, they didn't know what diets were back then, and he came in, changed everything, and it led to team success. And Arsenal at that time, because they had that unknown sort of relationship with Arsenal, you know, they went with it. But when Brian went to Leeds, they didn't want to didn't want to believe in his philosophy. They had a philosophy that was already winning, so why would they change? And what the biggest thing that annoyed me on the film is how the players went to the board and literally voted him out. And it was
Yeah,
just like,
that's awful. I
yeah.
think
And it
like
happens. It happens. It still happens now. It still
yeah,
happens.
it definitely does, and it's the fact of in hindsight, it's like hindsight's a killer, I think, and especially in that Clough situation of I'm assuming like if he could have went back to that, he would have gone into that with a totally different mindset from when he was obviously finished managing.
Yeah.
Fact of like they sacked him for like 44 days, and it's like it's not enough time for any manager to succeed in the job, is it? And like
No. I
the
think. But
fact
did
all
he
the board,
lose? Did he not
he,
lose the final?
he
Cup
lost it.
charity.
I think he lost. Did he lose a community shield on like day one? And like Billy Bremner got sent off or something. Like
Yeah.
he got sent a big match ban. He's like one of the most important players at the club. But the problem is that he went into a club and he never even had the chance to win the dressing room because he already lost before he even walked into the job. That's how I felt.
Yeah. Like you
Like
see in the film where he goes to have the training session and you know like he just comes and he goes like all these players don't want to listen to him and he goes oh I scored this amount of goals at English level like you should listen to me and all that like that sort of attitude to
yeah,
have. And like he's not talking like fair enough if he went into a job where they've not won a game, you know, like in the championship and they're battling for promotion, fair enough for coming in and saying them sort of words. But to say it to a team that's already won the league, the
yeah.
first
Basically, but like world beaters, really. They were like a massive in Europe as well, and
yeah,
like to come in and just have that kind of that
ego.
power, isn't it? That's why I thought like honestly, we were on about before, like the winning effect, like
Yeah,
can affect your judgment and your behaviour, like psychologically. And I think that's what he did when he went
yeah,
to Leeds.
and it's proving to be negative. So
Definitely. Well,
yeah,
I haven't got any more questions anyway, mate. I think we reviewed that quite well. You know, gone into in depth with a few other examples of modern day football and our
definitely.
coaching specifically as well. I think that's quite a good
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah, and yeah. So if you are interested in watching Damn United, it's a very good film, if, especially for you know the younger generation who's not really heard more. Well, they've probably heard of Brian Clough, but they haven't heard into detail of what how big he was and how you know like how influential he was to the development of English football going forward. And I definitely recommend watching Damned United. You'll be able to stream it online or buy the CD. It's from 2009, so there's probably quite a few hanging around. So yeah, so
Yeah.
thank you guys for listening or watching to another episode of the Fylde Road Coaching Podcast. Please subscribe and like and comment any films you recommend us watching, and yeah, hopefully we see you again.
See you very soon. See you later.